Burt Lancaster, a name synonymous with Hollywood glamour, raw charisma, and some of the most iconic performances of the 20th century. He dazzled audiences, commanded screens, and seemed to navigate fame with effortless charm. But behind the public persona of the Golden Age legend, there were secrets no fan ever imagined. For decades, rumors whispered about Lancaster's temper, his uncompromising standards, and his private disdain for certain colleagues. Yet until now, the truth has remained buried beneath layers of politeness, public relations, and Hollywood etiquette. Burt Lancaster, the beloved star, harbored strong feelings about actors he worked with, and some of those feelings were far from friendly. He despised certain co-stars in ways that shaped sets, influenced productions, and sometimes even threatened careers. The man who could light up a screen also carried grudges, judgments, and a candid eye for talent, or the lack thereof. This documentary uncovers the names, the reasons, and the untold stories behind the secret dislikes of one of Hollywood's most iconic figures. What happens when the charm fades and only honesty remains? Burt Lancaster's hidden truths are about to be revealed. Burt Lancaster's ascent to Hollywood stardom was nothing short of legendary, a story of grit, charm, and undeniable talent. That turned him into one of the most magnetic leading men of his era. Born in 1913 in Manhattan to working-class parents, Lancaster's early life was far removed from the glamour of Tinseltown. He began as a circus acrobat, performing feats of daring that would later translate into the physical presence he brought to the screen. His transition into acting seemed almost destined. Lancaster's combination of athleticism, charisma, and intensity captivated audiences and filmmakers alike. But behind the golden image of effortless success, Lancaster was a perfectionist, demanding, exacting, and not afraid to express disdain for those who failed to meet his high standards. On set, he could charm, negotiate, and inspire, yet certain colleagues never earned his respect. Some actors in his eyes were lazy, egotistical, or lacking the dedication that he felt was essential to creating meaningful cinema. These hidden grudges were rarely discussed in public, but they shaped relationships, influenced casting decisions, and created tension that insiders often tiptoed around. Films like From Here to Eternity and Elmer Gantry showcased his ability to dominate the screen, yet behind the scenes, Lancaster maintained a keen eye for mediocrity, particularly in co-stars who he felt threatened the integrity of a production. His dislikes were not born of pettiness alone. They were tied to his devotion to craft. He respected talent, discipline, and professionalism, but had little patience for those he believed undermined a film or disrespected their role. Crew members, directors, and friends would often witness his subtle but unmistakable disapproval. The curt remarks, the rolled eyes, or the icy stares reserved for those who displeased him. Yet, despite his private judgments, Lancaster maintained a public image of courtesy and diplomacy, never revealing the full extent of his personal grievances. This duality, public charm versus private disdain, was a defining feature of his Hollywood persona. His grudges were carefully contained, whispered about in industry circles, and often concealed beneath layers of politeness and professionalism. But as decades pass and interviews, letters, and insider accounts come to light, the curtain is finally being pulled back. What audiences once assumed was simply professional distance was, in some cases, outright dislike. And while Lancaster's legacy as a screen legend is unquestioned, these hidden rivalries offer a rare glimpse into the uncompromising standards, personal judgments, and occasionally ruthless honesty of a man who demanded excellence from everyone, including himself. By understanding the conflicts behind the camera, we uncover a side of Burt Lancaster that Hollywood rarely exposed, a side that is as human, flawed, and fascinating as the roles that made him immortal. Burt Lancaster's on-screen brilliance often masked the storm brewing behind the cameras. While audiences marveled at his charisma and commanding presence, not every co-star shared the same admiration or the same work ethic. Insider accounts reveal that Lancaster harbored private animosities towards several actors who he felt threatened his craft, disrupted productions, or lacked the discipline he demanded. One of the most notorious examples was his dislike for a fellow leading man in a high-profile 1960s epic. On set, Lancaster reportedly found this co-star insufferable, criticizing him for overacting, vanity, and a failure to respect the collaborative nature of filmmaking. Crew members recall tension so palpable it could be felt in every frame. Even in scenes where the two actors were never on camera together, the air seemed charged with unspoken hostility. Lancaster's frustrations were not limited to just one individual. He maintained a mental list of colleagues who failed to meet his standards, and he did not hesitate to voice disdain behind closed doors. His contempt was often subtle, a sharp remark here, an icy stare there, yet those who observed closely understood the depth of his feelings. Unlike tabloid scandals that play out publicly, Lancaster's grievances were rarely broadcast. They existed in whispered conversations, private letters and industry anecdotes that only now are surfacing. And while some might dismiss his behavior as arrogance, those who worked with him insist it was rooted in devotion to craft, a refusal to compromise artistic integrity for the sake of camaraderie or convenience. Yet this dedication came at a cost. His co-stars, unaware of the intensity of his disapproval, often misread his professionalism for aloofness, causing further tension and misunderstandings. The irony, of course, is that many of these same actors went on to praise Lancaster publicly, never realizing how little he truly tolerated some of them. It was a delicate balancing act, maintaining Hollywood diplomacy while privately cataloging grievances, an act of calculated restraint that few could match. If you're fascinated by Hollywood secrets and the hidden rivalries of legendary stars, make sure to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps bring these untold stories to light. These private hostilities sometimes influenced film sets in unexpected ways. Directors were forced to navigate the tension, often adjusting scenes, blocking, or even lines to prevent conflict from spilling into production. Crew members described the subtle yet omnipresent pressure, a quiet insistence from Lancaster that excellence must prevail and that mediocrity would not be tolerated, even if it meant confronting powerful peers. For Lancaster, it was never personal. It was professional to the core. His judgments were precise, methodical, and unyielding, a reflection of his belief that art demanded sacrifice, discipline, and respect. By understanding the co-stars he could not stand, we gain insight into the exacting nature of a Hollywood icon whose standards were as high as the legacy he would leave behind, a legacy forged not only by his brilliance on screen, but by his uncompromising commitment to the craft of acting. Beyond the glitz of red carpets and the applause of packed theaters, Burt Lancaster's reputation for private grudges extended deep into the very heart of Hollywood studios. Producers, directors, and crew members who worked with him recall a man of extraordinary talent, but also of sharp, unfiltered judgment. He scrutinized his co-stars with the same intensity he applied to himself, assessing whether they respected the craft, shared his dedication, or threatened the artistic vision of a project. Those who failed to meet his standards often found themselves the subject of subtle reprimands, exclusion from key creative decisions, or cold indifference that could make a tense set feel even more fraught. Studio insiders remember instances where Lancaster quietly vetoed casting choices or influenced script rewrites to avoid working alongside individuals he openly disliked. What made these dynamics particularly striking was Lancaster's ability to maintain an outwardly affable persona in public while quietly shaping the behind-the-scenes reality of his films. Directors would sometimes find themselves caught between maintaining peace on set and honoring Lancaster's demands, while crew members learned to read his body language for signs of silent disapproval. It was a world of unspoken rules, where a glance or a gesture could convey more than a conversation ever would. Letters, memoirs, and interviews from contemporaries reveal that some actors who appeared friendly on camera were privately regarded with disdain by Lancaster, their talent or attitude failing to impress a man who set the bar extraordinarily high. Yet, despite his criticisms, he was capable of mentorship, providing guidance to those who demonstrated commitment and humility. It was this duality, harsh critic to some, generous mentor to others, that defined Lancaster's off-screen relationships. This hidden side of his life also extended to negotiations, contracts, and studio politics, where his influence could make or break careers. While fans celebrated his performances, few realized the extent to which he controlled the environments in which he worked, ensuring that mediocrity or arrogance did not compromise his art. Such stories, once kept under wraps, now illuminate the calculated precision with which Lancaster navigated Hollywood. The man who could deliver legendary performances on screen was equally legendary behind the scenes, not only for his talent but for his unflinching pursuit of excellence. His judgments, grudges, and interventions were not capricious. They were rooted in a deep respect for the craft, a belief that only those who approached acting with dedication deserved a place alongside him. By revealing these secrets, we gain an understanding of Burt Lancaster as a multidimensional figure, a superstar adored worldwide, a private individual with strong convictions, and an uncompromising artist whose hidden opinions shaped the very films that immortalized him. After decades of speculation and whispers behind studio walls, the truth about the actors Burt Lancaster truly despised is finally coming to light. Interviews with contemporaries, unpublished letters, and insider accounts paint a picture of a man whose charm and charisma masked a sharper, more judgmental side. Among the names frequently mentioned, some were co-stars whose approach to acting clashed directly with Lancaster's own rigorous standards. He reportedly could not tolerate performers who relied on vanity rather than skill, or those whose presence disrupted the delicate chemistry of a film set. In some cases, this disdain led to tense working conditions, subtle power plays, and even lasting professional rifts. But Lancaster's dislikes were rarely indiscriminate. He reserved his sharpest criticisms for those who, in his eyes, betrayed the craft itself. These actors, despite public successes and glowing media portrayals, fell short of the exacting measures he applied to every project. For Lancaster, excellence was not just a personal pursuit, it was a non-negotiable expectation for anyone who shared the screen with him. Some of these figures were rumored to be difficult divas. Others simply lacked the emotional depth or dedication he demanded. Crew members recall quiet warnings, indirect criticisms, or gestures that communicated his disapproval without a word spoken. Yet, as harsh as his judgments could be, they were never arbitrary. Lancaster's goal was always to protect the integrity of the work. Publicly, he remained courteous and professional, ensuring that his grievances never became tabloid fodder or overt scandal. Privately, however, these feelings shaped his interactions, choices, and the dynamics of the productions he led. Now, decades later, with the benefit of hindsight and testimony from those who witnessed these dynamics firsthand, the hidden truths are finally revealed. The names, once whispered in private corridors, reflect a Hollywood reality that contrasts sharply with the glamour seen on screen. A man of extraordinary talent, a perfectionist unwilling to compromise, and a legend who could love a craft but quietly despise the failings of certain colleagues. Understanding these dynamics adds a layer of depth to Lancaster's legacy, not diminishing his achievements, but highlighting the complexity of a man who navigated fame, talent, and human imperfections with unflinching clarity. In revealing these long-hidden grievances, we glimpse the truth behind the smiles and applause. Burt Lancaster, a Hollywood icon, was a man who celebrated excellence, demanded commitment, and never hesitated to quietly call out what he perceived as mediocrity. His story reminds us that even legends have secrets, and that the very brilliance that captivated millions was, in part, fueled by a discerning and sometimes ruthless eye for talent.